For us at the Ethics Center, conflict of interest is both an ethical concept as well as obviously a legal concept. Can you tell us what your concerns are about the broader definition of conflict of interest and board members?
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, a conflict of interest is where the director's own self-interest competes with or clashes with that of the corporation on which he or she is a director. Kirk, it might be useful to say, why is it important?
Yes.
Why is it important that we identify conflict? There's a lot of public policy reasons why it's so important. I think, first of all, I think we in the governance community are trying to promote transparency, really at almost all levels. And for directors to be able to identify conflicts of interest and disclose them provides more transparency into the process of decision making and gives the board members, the fellow board members, a sense of confidence about the judgment and decisions that are being made around the table. And I think there's also this public interest to be served, because I do believe that where conflicts of interest are identified and disclosed, the public gains more confidence in the corporation as an institution and more broadly in our capital markets.
And so I gather you believe the regulatory ways we've dealt with that and the statutory standards that have developed may not map the entire area of concern.
They set the floor, they set the minimum standard. But I think it's very important that corporations think carefully about conflicts to see whether or not it might be appropriate in their context to go beyond those minimum standards and adopt procedures that are more robust.
Do you want to give us some examples of some of the conflicts that you don't think perhaps are covered by the floor of regulatory and statutory?
Well, I think some of the most common areas where conflicts arise, there are really four that I would identify. The first one, which is perhaps the most common, is where the director himself or herself is involved with another entity that is doing business with the corporation on whose board they serve. That's a very clear conflict, and I think almost all corporations will identify that as a conflict and take appropriate steps. What are the appropriate steps? And the appropriate steps, of course, will be to make the disclosure of the conflict in some detail and to then allow the non-interested directors, that is those who are free from that conflict, to make a determination about whether the conflict is sufficiently severe that the interested director should be excluded from the discussion and the decision making, and they should do that in kind of an executive session without the director's participation.
Now, we've had cases in the Valley where CEOs serve on each other's boards, and occasionally they're customers of each other, or sell to each other, or even competitors in various divisions. Are there cases where that kind of conflict simply rises to the level that you can't serve as a director?
It could. I mean, if, for example, one company is a supplier to another, and the quantity that's purchased is so substantial that it represents perhaps the majority of the business of the supplier. It would be, I think, very difficult for that individual to serve on the board where their business is so dramatically affected by decisions made by their customer.
What are your other three areas of concern?
So the other three would be, first, corporate opportunity. And corporate opportunities arise in sometimes fairly subtle ways. Many directors feel that if the board that they're serving on, if that company is unwilling to take advantage of that opportunity, why then they are free to go off and run with it and do it on their own. That opportunity belongs to the corporation on whose board that director serves, and they're not free to take personal advantage of the opportunity without permission, explicit permission.
And your last two?
Would be insolvency of a corporation, where the interests of that subsidiary diverge from that of the parent. And the final one would be a management buyout. And in that case, that conflict would need to be resolved most generally by the appointment of a special committee comprised of purely disinterested directors who would then take action on behalf of the company.
So these are kinds of situations that arise that have to be dealt with through transparency and often a very formal determination about how they're going to be handled.
Absolutely. The way they're handled mostly, I think, Kirk, is disclosure. That's what's so important here. It's disclosure, disclosure, disclosure.
Thank you very much.